The gravel road stretches ahead like a scar through green farmland, and Maya Chen grips the steering wheel so hard her knuckles have gone white. She's 31 years old, driving a 10-year-old sedan loaded with everything she owns, and she hasn't been on this road since she was 12. 19 years. That's how long it's been since social services pulled her away from her mother's corn farm, since she watched through the back window of a state vehicle as the only home she'd ever known disappear behind a bend in the road. 19 years since she promised her mother she'd come back someday. She almost didn't keep that promise. The letter arrived 3 weeks ago, forwarded through 4 different addresses before finally reaching her cramped apartment in Kansas City. Heavy paper, official letterhead, words that made her read the same paragraph 5 times before her brain could process what it meant. Dear Ms. Maya Chen, regarding the state of Eleanor Chen, deceased. As sole heir property located at 4750 County Road 89, you are hereby notified. Her mother was dead, had been dead for 6 months before anyone thought to track down the daughter who'd been taken away 19 years ago. And she'd left Maya everything. 650 hectares of prime Missouri farmland, a house Maya barely remembered, and debts she was only beginning to understand. The lawyer's voice on the phone had been kind but blunt. The property has significant value, Miss Chen, but there are complications. Tax liens, outstanding loans, and aggressive purchase offers from a development company. You need to come home and make some decisions. Home. The word feels foreign in her mouth. Maya hadn't thought of the farm as home in nearly 2 decades. Home had been a series of foster placements, group homes where she learned to keep her head down and her hopes lower. Home had been a studio apartment she shared with 2 other girls during community college. Home had been an efficiency unit above a laundromat, where she'd lived for the past 3 years, working 2 jobs and trying to forget that she'd once had a mother who sang while harvesting corn and taught her daughter to read the sky for weather. Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story is touching you already, make sure you're subscribed. I've got something extra special saved for tomorrow. The farmhouse appears suddenly around a bend, and Maya's breath catches. It's smaller than she remembers, but memory does that to childhood places. The 2-story structure sits back on the road, white paint peeling in long strips, the wraparound porch sagging on one side. The tin roof shows rust patches like wounds, and one of the upstairs shutters hangs at an angle, but it's standing. After 19 years of abandonment, after her mother's death, after everything, it's still standing. Maya pulls into the long driveway, weeds growing through the gravel, and cuts the engine. The silence is immediate and total. No traffic sounds, no city noise. Just wind moving through tall grass and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. She sits in the car for a long moment, looking at the house. The porch where her mother used to shell peas in the evening. The window of her old bedroom, 2nd floor, left side. The oak tree her mother planted the year Maya was born, now massive, its branches reaching toward the house like protective arms. The cornfields stretch away on all sides, and they're a mess. What should be orderly rows ready for fall harvest is instead a chaotic tangle of overgrowth. Some sections show evidence of volunteer corn, plants that seeded themselves from previous years. Other areas are completely overtaken by weeds. The irrigation equipment stands frozen and rusted. The barn leans heavily to one side, its red paint faded to the color of dried blood. This is what 19 years of neglect looks like. This is what happens when a farm loses its farmer. Maya forces herself out of the car. Her legs feel unsteady, like she's stepping onto foreign ground instead of land her family has worked for 3 generations. The afternoon heat presses down, humid and thick. September, Missouri. The air heavy with the promise of autumn, but summer still clinging hard. She walks slowly toward the house, her footsteps loud on the wooden porch steps. 3 of them are rotted through, and she has to skip them carefully. The front door is locked, but the lawyer gave her keys. An entire ring of them, labeled in her mother's careful handwriting. Front door, barn, equipment shed, root cellar. The lock sticks, then gives. The door swings inward with a groan that sounds almost human. The smell hits her first. Dust and abandonment, yes, but underneath that, something familiar. Her mother's lavender sachets, with smoke from the old fireplace. The faint ghost of cornmeal and honey, the smell of her mother's kitchen on Sunday mornings. Maya steps inside, and the past crashes over her like a wave. The living room is exactly as she remembers. The same floral couch, now covered with a sheet yellowed by time. The same bookshelf packed with agricultural manuals and her mother's beloved poetry collections. The same photographs on the mantel, though she can't bring herself to look at them yet. Everything is covered in dust. Thick layers of it, coating surfaces like snow. But nothing has been moved. Nothing has been stolen or vandalized. The house has simply waited, frozen in time, for someone to return. Maya walks through rooms like a ghost touring her own past. The kitchen with its ancient gas stove and the table where she did homework while her mother cooked. The pantry still stocked with dusty canning jars, preserved vegetables from harvest years gone by. The mudroom where her mother's work boots still sit, caked with dried mud, waiting for feet that will never fill them again. Upstairs, she finds her old bedroom, the twin bed with the quilt her grandmother made, the bookshelf filled with library books her mother never returned, couldn't bear to return after Maya was taken away, the desk where she used to draw pictures of the farm, of her mother, of the life she thought would last forever. On the desk, placed carefully, deliberately, is a wooden box. Maya's hands shake as she picks it up. It's beautifully made, the wood polished smooth, with intricate carvings of corn stalks along the sides. Her mother made this. Maya recognizes the style, remembers watching her mother work in the barn during winter evenings, creating beauty from raw material. The box isn't locked. Maya lifts the lid slowly. Inside, wrapped in cloth, is a leather-bound journal. Her mother's handwriting covers the first page in careful, deliberate script. For Maya, when you come home, because I know you will. The words blur as tears fill Maya's eyes. Her mother had known. Even after all those years, even knowing she might not live to see it, her mother had believed Maya would return. Beneath the journal are other items. A stack of envelopes, all addressed to Maya at various foster homes, all marked Return to Sender. Letters her mother had tried to send, letters social services had blocked. A photograph of Maya at age 12, taken the day before she was removed, standing in the cornfield with her mother, both of them smiling, neither knowing what was coming. And at the bottom of the box, something that makes Maya's breath stop entirely. A land deed, original, official, dated 1952, granting Eleanor Chen's grandfather, Robert Chen, 650 hectares of land in perpetuity. The property description matches exactly where Maya now stands. But clipped to the deed is a modern document, a letter dated 6 months ago, 1 month before her mother died. Mrs. Chun, this is our final offer. Vance Development Corporation is prepared to pay $2.8 million for your property. This is substantially above market value and reflects our commitment to developing this region responsibly. Your continued refusal to negotiate is causing unnecessary complications. We urge you to reconsider before legal measures become necessary. Sincerely, Richard Vance, President, Vance Development Corporation. Maya reads the letter 3 times. $2.8 million. Her mother had refused that kind of money. Why? She unfolds another document tucked beneath the letter. It's a geological survey report dated 2 years ago. The language is technical, dense with terminology Maya doesn't fully understand, but certain phrases jump out at her. Significant aquifer detected beneath property, estimated capacity, potential commercial water rights, value in current market conditions estimated at $15 to $20 million. The box slips from Maya's hands, landing on the desk with a heavy thud. $15 to $20 million. Not the land itself, the water underneath it. That's what Vance Development really wants. That's why they'd offered nearly $3 million for a farm that appears worthless. Because beneath the neglected cornfields, beneath the rotted barn and failing house, there's an aquifer, water. In a world where droughts are becoming more common, where water rights are increasingly valuable, her mother's farm sits on top of a fortune. And her mother had known and refused to sell. Refused to give up even when she was dying. Even when she had nothing, because she believed Maya would come back, would reclaim what was hers. Maya sits on the edge of her childhood bed, the journal and documents spread around her, and feels the weight of her mother's faith settling on her shoulders. She'd driven here planning to sign whatever papers a lawyer put in front of her, sell the property, take whatever money she could get, return to Kansas City and her small life. She convinced herself she had no connection to this place anymore, that 19 years had severed all ties. But sitting in her old room, holding her mother's journal, staring at evidence of secrets and value and deliberate preservation, Maya understands something fundamental has shifted. This isn't just property. This is her mother's legacy. This is 3 generations of family history. This is everything her mother protected and died defending. And someone wants it badly enough to threaten legal action. Someone saw her mother as an obstacle, saw this land as a prize worth any price. Maya picks up the journal and opens it to the first entry. Year 1 after Maya was taken, her mother had written, "They said I was unfit. Said a single mother working a farm couldn't provide proper care. Said Maya needed stability, structure, opportunities one couldn't give her. They took my daughter and left me with broken land and a broken heart, but they can't take the farm. And they can't take my hope that someday Maya will come home and understand everything I did to keep this place safe for her." The entries continue, years of them. Her mother documenting the farm struggles, the attempts by developers to purchase, the pressure from banks and county officials. Years of a woman fighting alone to preserve something for a daughter who might never return. The most recent entry is dated 1 week before her mother died. "I'm tired. The doctors say my heart is failing. I think they're right. But I've lasted long enough to finalize the protections. The aquifer rights are documented. The land deed is clear. Everything is ready for Maya. Vance Development has threatened lawsuits, claimed I'm blocking progress, said they'll find ways to force the sale after I'm gone. But they don't understand. This land doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Maya. It always has. They can threaten all they want. My daughter is stronger than they know. When she comes home, she'll finish what I started." Maya closes the journal carefully and looks around her childhood room. The afternoon light is fading, casting long shadows across the worn floorboards. Outside, the cornfields rustle in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the distance, a truck engine rumbles along the county road. She came here planning to surrender, to walk away from a past that had only brought her pain. But her mother hadn't walked away. Despite everything, the poverty, the isolation, the loss of her only child, Eleanor Chun had stood her ground, had protected this land not for herself, but for a daughter she believed would someday understand why it mattered. Maya stands and walks a window. She looks out over the neglected fields, the broken equipment, the barn that leans like a tired old man. It's a wreck. It's overwhelming. It would take money she doesn't have and knowledge she never learned to restore any of it. But beneath it all, there's water. Millions of dollars worth of water. And more than that, there's principle. There's the question of whether Maya is the kind of person who honors her mother's faith, or the kind who runs when things get difficult. She'd been running for 19 years. Maybe it's time to stand still. As the sun sets over Missouri farmland, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, Maya Chen makes a decision. She's not selling, not to Vance Development, not to anyone. She's staying, at least long enough to understand what her mother protected, at least long enough to prove she's worthy of the faith her mother never stopped having. The farm might be broken, but broken things can be fixed. She learned that in 19 years of surviving systems designed to break her, she learned resilience in places that tried to teach her helplessness. Now she'll learn what her mother tried to teach her all those years ago. How to read land, how to understand water, how to stand against people who think money and power give them the right to take what belongs to others. Maya picks up the wooden box, tucks it under her arm, and heads downstairs. She has a lot of work to do. Section 2. The Catalyst, First Morning in the Visitor. Maya wakes to unfamiliar silence and the smell of dust. For a confused moment, she doesn't know where she is. Then the cracked ceiling above her comes into focus, and memory crashes back. The farmhouse, her mother's bedroom. She'd slept in her mother's bed last night, too exhausted to do anything else. The morning light filtering through yellow curtains is thin and gray. Dawn, maybe 6 a.m. She checks her phone. No signal. Right. She'd forgotten how far from cell towers the farm sits. The isolation she once took for granted now feels oppressive. Cutting her off from the connected world, she's learned to navigate. She forces herself up and stumbles to the bathroom. The water runs rust-colored for several minutes before clearing, and when she turns the shower knob, nothing happens. Right. The water heater is probably decades past functional. She washes her face in cold sink water, using a bar of soap she found under the counter, still wrapped, as if her mother had bought it and saved it for a guest who never came. Downstairs, the kitchen is exactly as she left it last night. She'd managed to get the gas stove working long enough to heat water for instant coffee, and the mug still sits on the counter, coffee cold and scummed over. Her backpack rests on the table, containing the sum total of what she brought from Kansas City. Clothes for a few days, toiletries, her laptop that's useless without internet, and the small leather folder containing documents from her mother's lawyer. She should call him. James Merritt, his card reads, estate attorney. He'd seem kind on the phone, patient while explaining complications she didn't fully understand. He's expecting her to come by his office today to sign papers, to begin the process of liquidating the estate. That was the plan. Except the plan changed the moment she found her mother's journal. The moment she understood what was really at stake. Maya makes fresh coffee, instant granules in lukewarm water, because she's too impatient to wait for the stove again, and walks out onto the front porch. The morning is cool, humidity hanging heavy in the air. Mist rises from the cornfields in ghostly columns. The land stretches away in all directions, 650 hectares of it, nearly 1,700 acres. Maya does the math in her head, converting metrics to the imperial measurements farmers here use. Her mother had owned 1,700 acres of prime Missouri farmland, and Maya hadn't even known, hadn't asked, hadn't wanted to know about the life that was stolen from her. She's standing there, coffee mug warming her hands, when she hears the vehicle approaching. The engine sound carries across the flat land long before she sees it. A pickup truck, newer model, immaculate black paint. It pulls into her driveway at 6:47 in the morning, uninvited and unwelcome. The driver who emerges is exactly the type Maya expected. Mid-50s, wearing expensive casual clothes meant to look working class. Pressed jeans, boots that have never seen real work, a polo shirt with a logo embroidered on the chest. His smile is practiced professional and doesn't reach his eyes. "Miss Chen," he calls, walking toward her porch without waiting for invitation. "Maya Chen." "That's right. And you are?" "Richard Vance. Vance Development Corporation." He extends his hand. Maya doesn't move from the porch, doesn't come down to meet him. After a moment, he lowers his hand, and something flickers across his face. Annoyance, quickly masked. "I apologize for the early visit. I wanted to catch you before you got too settled in." "Settled in? I understand you just arrived. Difficult circumstances. Losing your mother. You have my condolences." The words are smooth, rehearsed. "I also understand you're from Kansas City, have a life there. This property must be quite overwhelming for someone unfamiliar with farming." Maya sips her coffee and says nothing. Richard shifts his weight. "I'll be direct. Your mother and I have been in negotiations for some time regarding the purchase of this property. Unfortunately, she passed before we could finalize an agreement. But I'm prepared to make you the same offer I made her. $2.8 million, cash, quick closing. You could be back in Kansas City within a week, free of this burden. My mother refused your offer. Your mother was elderly, unwell, perhaps not thinking clearly about what was best. My mother," Maya interrupts, her voice cold, "was protecting what belonged to her family, and now it belongs to me." Richard's smile tightens. "Miss Chun, I don't think you understand the complications here. This property has significant tax liens. Your mother borrowed against it multiple times over the years. The mortgage payments are in arrears. Without immediate capital investment, you'll lose this land to the county within 6 months. My offer gives you a way out." "Out of what exactly?" "Out of a failing farm you have no ability to run. Out of debt you can't pay. Out of legal complications you don't want. He pulls a business card from his pocket and holds it up toward her. I'm offering you freedom, Miss Chen. The freedom to walk away with life-changing money and no strings attached. Maya descends a porch step slowly, crossing the distance between them. She takes the business card, looks at it, then looks directly into Richard Vance's eyes. My mother told you no for years. What makes you think her daughter will say yes? Because you're smart enough to recognize reality. Your mother was sentimental about this place. You're not. You left 19 years ago and never came back. Why pretend to care now? The words land like a slap. Maya feels heat rise in her face, anger and shame mixing together. Because he's right, isn't he? She did leave, did stay away, did build a life that had nothing to do with cornfields and water rights and stubborn mothers who died alone, defending land their daughters didn't care about. Except she hadn't left. She'd been taken, ripped away by a system that decided her mother's love and this farm weren't good enough. And she hadn't stayed away by choice. She'd stayed away because coming back hurt too much. Because every foster home had taught her that attachment led to loss. Get off my property, Maya says quietly. Excuse me. You heard me. Get off my land. Richard's expression hardens. Miss Chun, you're making a mistake. I've been patient. I've been generous. But my patience has limits. This development is happening with or without your cooperation. If you refuse to sell, I'll make sure the county forecloses. I'll tie you up in legal battles you can't afford. And when you finally lose everything, you won't get $2.8 million. You won't get anything. Is that a threat? It's reality. I'm giving you one chance to be smart about this. Take the money, walk away, or watch everything your mother tried to protect get taken from you anyway. Maya walks past him, heading toward his truck. She opens the driver's side door and stands there, holding it wide. Leave. Now. For a moment, Richard Vance stands frozen, clearly enthused of being dismissed. Then he straightens, adjusts his polo shirt, and walks to his truck with deliberate slowness, making sure she understands he's leaving by choice, not because she ordered it. Before he climbs in, he turns back. I'll give you 48 hours to reconsider. After that, my offer drops, and the legal actions begin. You're in over your head, Miss Chun. Way over your head. He drives away slowly, dust rising from his tires, the black truck too clean for country roads. Maya stands in her driveway until the sound of his engine fades completely. Her hands are shaking. From anger or fear or the adrenaline crash that follows confrontation. She's not sure. Maybe all three. She looks down at his business card. Richard Vance, President. Below that, an address in St. Louis. A phone number. An email. Everything polished and professional. The veneer of legitimacy over what her mother's journal had made clear was predatory pursuit of land he had no right to. Maya walks to the barn, her mother's keys heavy in her pocket. The barn's main door is stuck, swollen with moisture and time. She has to put her shoulder into it before it gives way with a groan that echoes across the empty fields. Inside, the air smells of old hay and motor oil. Light filters through gaps in the walls, illuminating dust motes suspended in golden columns. Agricultural equipment sits abandoned. Ancient tractors and harvesters that probably haven't run in a decade. Tools hang on wall hooks, organized with the same care her mother brought to everything. And there, on a workbench near the back, is what she's looking for. Her mother's office. A desk made from rough lumber. Paper stacked in careful piles. A filing cabinet painted green. Everything dusty but preserved, as if her mother just stepped out and would return any moment. Maya pulls open the filing cabinet. Inside are years of farm records. Tax documents. Loan papers. Correspondence with banks and government agricultural agencies. And near the back, a thick folder labeled Vance Development Harassment. She pulls it out and spreads the contents across the workbench. Letters. Dozens of them going back 5 years. Richard Vance's company had started subtle, expressing interest in purchasing land for agricultural development partnerships. When her mother refused, the tone shifted. Letters from lawyers questioning her property boundaries. Survey challenges. claims that her irrigation system violated water rights regulations, complaints filed with the county about agricultural runoff, about equipment storage, about violations that her mother meticulously documented as false. It was systematic harassment, a campaign to pressure her mother into selling, to make farming so difficult, so legally complicated, that surrender seemed like the only option. But her mother hadn't surrendered. She'd fought every claim, documented every false accusation, kept records that now proved a pattern of predatory behavior. Near the bottom of the file, Maya finds something that makes her stomach clench. A letter from Child Protective Services, dated 19 years ago, 1 month before Maya was removed from her mother's care. Mrs. Chen, we have received reports regarding the living conditions and care of your daughter, Maya Chen, age 12. Multiple anonymous complaints suggest inadequate supervision, unsafe agricultural work environment, and unstable housing conditions. A home inspection will be conducted. Maya reads it 3 times. Anonymous complaints. Multiple reports. 1 month before she was taken away. She pulls out her phone, forgetting there's no signal. Frustration rises hot in her chest. She needs to talk to the lawyer, needs to understand what she's seeing, what it means. But deep down, she already knows. Someone had wanted her mother vulnerable. Someone had seen a single woman farming alone with a daughter and decided that removing the daughter would break the mother's will to fight. Someone had used the system as a weapon, and that someone was likely connected to the man who just threatened her in her own driveway. Maya gathers the documents carefully, tucks them under her arm, and heads back to the house. Richard Vance gave her 48 hours. She'll need every minute of them. Maya drives into town with a folder of documents on her passenger seat and a knot of anger tight in her chest. The nearest town is Millbrook, population 3,200, 20 minutes down County Road 89. She remembers it vaguely from childhood. A main street with a handful of businesses, a grain elevator that dominated the skyline. People who knew everyone's business. The cell signal returns about 5 miles from town, and her phone immediately buzzes with messages. Texts from her roommate asking when she's coming back. Emails from her manager at the restaurant where she waitresses asking about her shifts. Notifications from bill collectors, utility companies, the ordinary debris of her Kansas City life demanding attention she can't give. She ignores all of it and calls James Merritt's office. His secretary answers, cheerful and efficient. Merritt and Associates. How may I help you? This is Maya Chen. I need to speak with Mr. Merritt as soon as possible. Oh, Miss Chen. Yes, we've been expecting you. Mr. Merritt has time this afternoon at 2 o'clock, if that works. Maya glances at the dashboard clock. 9:47 a.m. I'll be there. She parks on Millbrook's Main Street, which looks exactly as she remembers and completely different at the same time. The hardware store is still there, same faded sign. But the diner her mother used to take her to is now a coffee shop with exposed brick and vintage Edison bulbs. The feed store has been replaced by an antique mall. Progress, or what passes for it in small Missouri towns, slowly being absorbed by sprawl from St. Louis. The library sits at the end of Main Street, a Carnegie building from 1923. Solid brick with white columns. Maya climbs the steps, pulling open heavy wooden doors that release the familiar smell of old books and floor polish. The woman at the circulation desk looks up and does a visible double take. She's maybe 60, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her name tag reads Dorothy Klein, head librarian. My God, Dorothy says quietly. Maya? Maya Chen? Maya stops. Yes. Do I know you? You wouldn't remember me. You were just a girl when... Dorothy trails off, then comes around the desk. I knew your mother. Eleanor and I were friends. I'm so sorry for your loss. The kindness in her voice threatens to crack something in Maya's carefully maintained composure. Thank you. What brings you in? Are you back to settle the estate? That's part of it, but I need to research something. Property records, historical documents about my mother's farm. And I need to understand something about Child Protective Services cases from 19 years ago. Dorothy's expression shifts, understanding dawning. Come with me? She leads Maya to a back room where the library keeps local history archives. Microfiche machines, dusty file boxes, county records dating back to the town's founding. Dorothy pulls out several boxes, labeled with years and property sections. Your mother came here often, Dorothy says quietly as she works, especially in the last few years. She was researching water rights, aquifer laws, development regulations. She knew someone was coming for her land, and she was preparing. You knew about the aquifer? Everyone in town knows there's water under that land. Your great-grandfather, Robert Chen, drilled the first well there in 1952, found an underground river when he was just looking for irrigation. But he never exploited it, never sold rights. He kept it quiet, kept it safe. Dorothy pulls out a file box. Your mother did the same. She could have sold those water rights for millions and lived comfortably. Instead, she protected them. For you. The words settle heavy on Maya's shoulders. Why me? I left. I never came back. You didn't leave. Honey, you were taken. Dorothy's voice is firm. And your mother never blamed you for that. She blamed the people who used the system to break her family apart. Maya opens a file box. Inside are decades of property records, survey maps, water rights documentation, but also newspaper clippings going back 19 years. One headline catches her eye: local farm under investigation for child welfare concerns. She reads the article with growing fury. It details anonymous complaints about Eleanor Chen's fitness as a mother, unsafe working conditions, inadequate supervision. The article quotes concerned community members who remain unnamed. It's written to sound neutral, but the implication is clear. A single mother struggling to farm alone, a child potentially at risk. I remember when that ran. Dorothy says quietly, your mother was devastated. The whole thing was orchestrated. Maya, someone wanted you removed from that farm, and they used every tool available to make it happen. Vance development. I can't prove it. Your mother couldn't prove it either. But Richard Vance's father, Thomas Vance, started trying to buy your great-grandfather's land back in the 1970s. When Robert refused, Thomas shifted tactics, made life difficult, challenged property lines, filed complaints with the county. Robert died in 1979, and the farm passed to your mother. She was young, barely 25, suddenly responsible for 1,700 acres. Thomas thought she'd fold. She didn't. Dorothy pulls out another box. So he waited, watched, and when your mother was raising you alone after your father died, Thomas saw an opportunity. A single mother working dangerous agricultural equipment, a young daughter helping with farm work. It was easy to paint that as neglectful, even though it was just normal farm life. Maya's hands shake as she holds the newspaper clipping. Someone reported my mother for letting me drive the tractor, for teaching me to work the fields, for things that generations of farm kids have always done. And the system believed the reports because they came from concerned citizens. Citizens who were likely connected to people who wanted your mother's land. Dorothy's voice is bitter. Thomas Vance died 12 years ago, but his son Richard picked up exactly where his father left off. Maya photographs every document with her phone, building a file of evidence. Property challenges from the 1970s. Water rights disputes from the 1980s. The CPS reports from 19 years ago. A pattern spanning decades. 3 generations of ancestors trying to acquire 3 generations of Chen family land. What happened after I was removed? Maya asks, how did my mother survive? Barely. She lost half her acreage to foreclosure within 5 years. Couldn't work it all alone. Couldn't afford to hire help. The bank took the western parcels, sold them to, guess who? Vance Development. Your mother kept the core property, the 650 hectares with the house, and the main aquifer access. She held on through sheer stubbornness. Dorothy pulls out one final folder. She came in here 2 years ago with this. Asked me to keep it safe. Said if anything happened to her, if you ever came back, I should give it to you. Inside the folder is a hand-drawn map of the farm. But it's not just property lines. It shows the aquifer system underground, hand-labeled in her mother's careful script. Depth measurements, flow rates, estimates of capacity. And along one edge, a note, Maya, this is why they want our land. This is what we're protecting. Not just water, but control over water. In 20 years, this will matter more than oil. Don't let them have it. Love, Mom. Maya's vision blurs. Her mother had been dying, had known time was running out, and she'd spent her final energy documenting what mattered, preparing for a daughter who might never return, who might not care, but who might, if she did come back, need to understand what she was inheriting. She never stopped believing in you, Dorothy says gently. Never stop preparing for your return. Even when people told her to let go, to sell, to move on, she said, Maya will come home, and when she does, she'll understand. Maya wipes her eyes roughly. I need to make copies of all of this. Already done. Dorothy produces a flash drive. I scanned everything 3 months ago, right after Eleanor died. I knew you'd need it. And Maya, Dorothy takes her hand. Your mother wasn't crazy or stubborn or foolish like people said. She was protecting something that matters, something bigger than money. You're standing on one of the largest undeveloped aquifers in this region. If Vance Development gets it, they'll drain it for commercial water sales, bottle it, sell it, profit from it until it's gone. Your mother understood that wasn't just theft of property. It was theft of future generations' water security. Maya closes her hand around the flash drive. How do I fight them? Richard Vance came to my house this morning, threatened me with foreclosure and legal battles I can't afford. You need an attorney who specializes in property rights and water law, and you need to file your claim to the water rights officially before Vance can challenge them. Dorothy writes down a name and address. Margaret Reeves. She's based in St. Louis but handles rural cases. She represented 3 families against corporate water privatization 5 years ago. Won every case. She's expensive, but she's worth it. I don't have money for expensive attorneys. You have 1,700 acres of land and water rights worth millions. That's collateral. Margaret takes cases on contingency if she believes in them. And trust me, when she sees what you have, she'll believe. Dorothy walks Maya to the front of the library. At the door, she squeezes Maya's hand. Your mother talked about you constantly. Wondered if you were happy, if you were safe, if you hated her for losing you. I told her you probably didn't even remember the farm. She said, she remembers. Maya remembers everything. She just doesn't know it yet. Prove her right. Honey, remember. Fight. Maya drives to James Merritt's office with her head spinning. The lawyer's suite is in a converted Victorian house, professional but unpretentious. His secretary leads her to a small conference room where Merritt waits with a stack of documents. He's younger than she expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a slightly rumpled appearance of someone who cares more about substance than style. Miss Chun, thank you for coming in. I know this must be overwhelming. You could say that. He spreads documents across the table. I'll be direct. Your mother's estate is complicated. The property is worth significant money. The land itself appraises at roughly $2 million. But there are liens against it totaling nearly $400,000. Unpaid property taxes, outstanding mortgage balance, agricultural loans. Without substantial capital, you'll face foreclosure within 6 months. What about the water rights? Merritt pauses. You know about the aquifer? I know Vance Development wants it. I know my mother refused to sell. What I need to understand is whether the water rights are separate from the land. They can be. Water rights in Missouri are complicated. They can be severed from surface property rights and sold separately. But according to your mother's deed, she never severed them. The water rights are attached to the land. Whoever owns the property owns the aquifer access. So if Vance Development forces foreclosure, they get the water. If they're the buyer at foreclosure auction, yes, they could bid on the property, acquire it for the debt amount, and gain control of both land and water rights. Maya pulls out the flash drive Dorothy gave her. I need you to look at something. For the next hour, they review the documents, the pattern of harassment, the CPS reports, the decades of pressure from Vance Development, the geological surveys showing exactly what lies beneath her mother's farm. Merritt's expression grows darker as he reads. This is systematic targeting. If we can prove the CPS reports were falsified or motivated by corporate interests rather than genuine welfare concern. Can we? It would be difficult. The reports are 19 years old, but the pattern is damning. And combined with the current pressure from Richard Vance, we could argue ongoing harassment, predatory business practices, potentially even conspiracy to defraud. What do I do? How do I stop foreclosure and fight Vance at the same time? Merritt leans back in his chair. Honestly, you need more than I can provide. I'm an estate attorney, good with wills and probate. You need a property rights specialist, someone who understands water law and corporate land acquisition tactics. He pulls out his phone. I know someone. Margaret Reeves, out of St. Louis. Dorothy already gave me her name. Good. Then you know she's the best. Call her today. Show her these documents. If she takes your case, you have a fighting chance. Maya gathers the papers. And if she doesn't, then you're facing foreclosure, a development corporation with deep pockets, and legal battles you can't afford. I'm sorry to be blunt, but those are the facts. As Maya leaves his office, her phone rings. Unknown number, local area code. She answers. Miss Chen, this is Frank Patterson. I own the farm adjacent to your mother's property, to the east. Wondered if you had a few minutes to talk. About what? About Richard Vance. About what he's been doing to people in this county. And about your mother. His voice is gruff but kind. Eleanor was a friend. I owe it to her to at least try to help her daughter. Can you meet me at the farm? Your farm. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Maya agrees and drives back to the farmhouse. She's pulling into the driveway when she sees Patterson's truck already waiting. An old Ford, genuinely work-worn, unlike Richard Vance's pristine vehicle. Patterson himself is maybe 70, weather-beaten face, hands that show decades of manual labor. He tips his cap when Maya approaches. Frank Patterson. Farmed the land next to your mother's for 40 years. I'm sorry about Eleanor. She was a good woman, a good farmer. Thank you. I'll get to the point. Richard Vance has been buying up properties all through this county for the past decade. Started with land nobody wanted, marginal farms, parcels too small to work efficiently. Folks thought he was doing them favors, paying fair prices. Then we figured out what he was really doing. The water. He's been mapping the aquifer system that runs under half the county. Your mother's land sits on the biggest access point, but there are smaller veins running through other properties, mine included. Frank pulls out a survey map. See these parcels in red? All purchased by Vance Development in the last 8 years. All sit above aquifer branches. He's trying to control the entire water system. Maya studies the map. The red parcels form a rough net around her mother's property. If Vance controls all the surrounding water access, he effectively controls the whole aquifer. Why didn't people refuse to sell? Some did. Your mother, obviously. Me, the Henderson family to the north. But Vance has ways of making life difficult. Property tax reassessments that drive up costs. Environmental complaints that trigger expensive inspections. Code violations for agricultural buildings. Equipment accidents that feel suspicious. Nothing provable. Nothing you could take to court. Just constant pressure until people give up. He did it to my mother. He did it to all of us. But Eleanor fought harder than anyone. She documented everything, kept records, filed counter complaints. She was building a case, trying to prove a pattern. Frank looks at the farmhouse. She died before she could finish. Heart attack, the doctor said. But I wondered. She was only 63, healthy as a horse, until suddenly she wasn't. The implication hangs between them. Maya feels cold despite the afternoon heat. Are you saying Vance might have? I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying your mother was the biggest obstacle to his plans, and then she conveniently died. I'm saying you should be careful, Maya, very careful. Frank hands her a folder. These are copies of my own records. Complaints Vance filed against me. Tax issues that mysteriously appeared. I'm giving them to you because combined with your mother's documents, they show a pattern. If you're planning to fight him, You'll need every piece of evidence you can get. Why help me? You barely know me. Because your mother helped me. When Vance tried to claim I was illegally accessing aquifer water 3 years ago, Eleanor testified on my behalf, provided geological surveys proving the water under my land was a separate vein, not connected to any Vance-owned parcels. She saved my farm. I owe her, and I owe it to this county to stop what Vance is doing. He walks back to his truck, then pauses. One more thing. Your mother applied for historical preservation status for your farmhouse 2 years ago. If it's approved, the property becomes much harder to develop or demolish. The application was still pending when she died. You might want to follow up on that. Could give you another layer of protection. After Frank leaves, Maya sits on the porch steps with folders of documents piled around her. The evidence is overwhelming. Decades of predatory behavior, systematic harassment, a clear pattern of advanced development targeting families with aquifer access. But evidence alone won't stop foreclosure, won't pay her mother's debts, won't protect this land from being seized and sold. She pulls out her phone and finds the number Dorothy gave her. Margaret Reeves, attorney at law. The phone rings 3 times before a crisp, professional voice answers. Reeves and Associates. My name is Maya Chen. I need help stopping foreclosure and fighting a corporation that's been trying to steal my family's land for 30 years. There's a pause. Then, tell me everything. Maya talks for 45 minutes, describing the aquifer, the documents, the harassment, Richard Vance's threats. She expects interruptions, questions, skepticism. Instead, Margaret Reeves listens in silence until Maya finishes. Then, I'll be there tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Don't sign anything. Don't talk to Vance or his representatives, and don't leave your property unguarded. This is bigger than a simple estate dispute, Miss Chen. This is corporate water theft. And if what you're describing is accurate, we have a case that could set precedent for water rights protection across the entire state. I can't afford. Contingency basis. We win, I take a percentage. We lose, you owe nothing. But Miss Chen, we're not going to lose. I've been waiting for a case like this. See you tomorrow. Maya ends a call and looks out at the cornfields, at the land her great-grandfather claimed, her mother defended, and she's now somehow responsible for protecting. The afternoon sun slants golden across the neglected rows, and she can almost see her 12-year-old self running through them, her mother's voice calling her home for dinner. She'd spent 19 years trying to forget this place. Now she has to remember everything. Not just the happy memories, but the skills her mother tried to teach her. How to read land, how to understand water systems, how to stand against people who mistake kindness for weakness. Her mother had fought alone for years. But Maya doesn't have to. She has Dorothy's research, Frank's testimony, James Merritt's legal knowledge, and now Margaret Reeves' expertise. She has evidence of decades of wrongdoing. She has rights to water worth millions. What she doesn't have is time. Richard Vance gave her 48 hours. That deadline is rapidly approaching. Maya stands and walks to the barn. She pulls open the door and surveys the abandoned equipment. The tools hanging on walls. The desk where her mother fought her quiet, determined battle against people who thought they could outlast her. They'd been wrong. Eleanor Chen hadn't surrendered, and her daughter won't either. Section 4. The deeper secret, second layer revelation. The manila envelope arrives with the morning mail, delivered by a postal carrier who eyes Maya with open curiosity before driving away. There's no return address, just her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Maya Chen, 4750, County Road 89. Inside are photocopied documents, yellow with age, medical records, and a note written on plain paper. Your mother deserves justice. So, do you? A friend. Maya spreads the papers across the kitchen table. Her coffee forgotten. They're medical records from County General Hospital, dated 19 years ago. Patient name, Eleanor Chen. Diagnosis, severe anxiety, stress-related cardiac symptoms, malnutrition. Physician notes, patient appears severely stressed. Reports harassment from unnamed parties. Concerned about daughter's safety. Recommends psychological evaluation. There's more. A psychiatric evaluation ordered by Child Protective Services conducted 3 weeks before Maya was removed. The psychiatrist's report reads, patient is coherent and rational but under extreme duress. Reports systematic harassment related to property disputes. While patient concerns may have basis in reality, her current mental state raises questions about ability to provide stable care for minor child. Recommend supervised living situation until patient's stress level stabilize. Maya reads the words again, feeling sick. Her mother had been declared unfit, not because she was actually neglectful, but because the stress of fighting Vance's development had been weaponized against her. The very harassment designed to force her to sell was used as evidence that she couldn't handle motherhood. The final document in the envelope makes Maya's hands shake. It's a letter from Thomas Vance, Richard's father, to the county supervisor, dated 3 weeks before the CPS investigation began. Dear Supervisor Mitchell, I write to express concern regarding conditions at the Chin Farm on County Road 89. As a neighboring property owner and concerned citizen, I've observed potential safety hazards that may endanger the minor child residing there. Agricultural equipment operated without proper supervision, inadequate housing conditions, signs of economic hardship that may impact child welfare. I trust the county will investigate these concerns promptly. Respectfully, Thomas Vance. It's all here. The pattern, the conspiracy, the deliberate use of government systems to destroy a woman who wouldn't surrender her land. Thomas Vance had weaponized Child Protective Services, had used concern for Maya's welfare as a cover for corporate greed. And it had worked. They'd taken Maya away, broken her mother's spirit, and nearly succeeded in forcing the sale of property. Maya is still staring at the documents when she hears a vehicle approaching. She tenses, expecting Richard Vance's black truck. Instead, it's a silver SUV with St. Louis plates. The woman who emerges is 50-something, dressed in a sharp blazer and jeans, carrying a leather briefcase. Her hair is steel gray, cut short and professional. She walks toward the house with the confidence of someone used to commanding rooms. Maya Chen, Margaret Reeves. I'm early. Hope you don't mind. You said 9. It's barely 8. I drove up last night, stayed in town. Couldn't wait. Margaret climbs the porch steps and extends her hand. I've been researching your case since we spoke. This is the kind of fight I went to law school for. Maya shakes her hand and gestures inside. I just received something you need to see. They sit at the kitchen table, and Margaret examines the medical records with growing intensity. When she finishes, she looks up at Maya with something like fury in her eyes. Do you know what this is? This is evidence of conspiracy to interfere with parental rights. This is proof that Thomas Vance deliberately triggered a CPS investigation to remove you from your mother's care, weakening her ability to resist selling her property. Can we prove it in court? These documents are a start, but we need more. We need to establish that Thomas Vance knew about the aquifer value before he started harassing your family. We need to prove the CPS complaints were false and motivated by corporate interest. And we need to connect Thomas's actions to Richard's current behavior. Margaret pulls out her laptop. I've been digging into Vance Development's history. They're not just a local development company anymore. They're part of a larger corporate structure called Vance Corp Industries, with subsidiaries in water management, agricultural development, and, this is interesting, bottled water sales. She turns a laptop to show Maya. Vance Corp Industries launched a premium water brand 5 years ago, Heartland Springs, marketed as pure Missouri aquifer water. Guess where they're getting that water? Properties they bought. Exactly. They purchase land above aquifer systems, drill extraction wells, bottle the water, and sell it for massive profit. Your mother's land sits above the largest undeveloped aquifer in the region. If Vance gets it, they could expand their bottling operation exponentially. Maya feels the pieces clicking into place. It's not about land development at all. That's just a cover story. Land development provides a legal justification for purchasing properties. But water extraction is the real business model. And it's brilliant in a deeply unethical way. Buy rural land cheap. Tell locals you're bringing progress and jobs through development. Then drain the aquifer for commercial water sales worth hundreds of millions. Margaret's expression is grim. Your mother figured this out. That's why she wouldn't sell at any price. She understood this wasn't just about her farm. It was about controlling water resources for an entire region. There's a knock at the door. Maya opens it to find Frank Patterson, the neighboring farmer, looking worried. Maya, we have a problem. County tax assessor came to my place this morning. Says there's been a reassessment of properties in this district. My taxes are going up 40%. He says yours are going up 70%, effective immediately. Margaret stands. Let me see the assessment notice. Frank hands over an official-looking document. Margaret scans it, her jaw tightening. This is retaliatory. There's no legitimate reason for a 70% tax increase on agricultural land. Someone's tried to make it financially impossible for you to keep this property. Can they do that? Maya asks. They can try, but we can appeal. We can also file a complaint alleging harassment and retaliatory tax practices. Margaret pulls out her phone. I'm calling the county assessor's office right now. While Margaret makes calls, pacing the porch and speaking in clipped legal language, Frank sits with Maya at the kitchen table. Your mother went through the same thing 7 years ago. He says quietly, sudden tax increase, threatened liens, pressure to sell. She fought it for 18 months, finally got it reversed, but it drained her savings, forced her to take out loans just to stay current. He meets Maya's eyes. They're doing it again, trying to break you the same way they tried to break her. Why are you still here? Maya asks, why haven't you sold and walked away? It would be easier. Frank is quiet for a moment. My grandfather homesteaded this land in 1889. For generations of Pattersons have farmed here. When Van started buying up properties, I thought about selling. Told myself I'm old. Don't have kids to pass it to. Might as well cash out. But then I thought about what it would mean. Letting a corporation drain the aquifer that sustained farms here for 150 years. Letting them privatize water that should belong to land. I couldn't do it. Some things matter more than money. Margaret returns, her expression determined. I spoke with the county assessor directly. He claims the reassessment is based on updated land values due to development potential. I informed him we'll be filing an immediate appeal and a formal complaint with the state revenue department alleging targeted harassment. That should slow them down. For how long? Maya asks. Long enough for us to file our main case. I'm drafting a lawsuit against Vance Development for 3 decades of predatory practices, conspiracy to defraud, interference with property rights, and abuse of government systems. We'll name Richard Vance personally, Vance Corp Industries, and any county officials who participated in the harassment. That sounds expensive and complicated. It is. But here's what they don't know. We're not fighting alone. I've been contacted by 3 other families in this county who've dealt with similar pressure from Vance. They're willing to testify. We also have interest from environmental groups concerned about aquifer depletion. This case could become a class action, multiple plaintiffs against Vance's entire corporate structure. Maya feels hope kindle for the first time since arriving. How long will this take? Months, possibly years. But in the meantime, we file for protective injunctions preventing foreclosure or for sale while the case is pending. We document every contact with Vance, every threat, every suspicious reassessment or complaint. Margaret's eyes are fierce. Your mother fought this battle alone and nearly won. You have backup. We're going to finish what she started. Over the next week, Maya's life becomes a blur of legal preparation. Margaret moves into a room at the Millbrook Inn and transforms it into a war room. They document everything. Property records going back to the 1950s. Every letter from Vance Development. Medical records showing her mother's stress-induced health problems. Testimony from neighbors about harassment and pressure tactics. Dorothy from the library provides historical context. Newspaper articles documenting the slow acquisition of properties by Vance over decades. James Merritt handles his state paperwork. Filing appeals on the tax assessment and securing temporary stays on debt collection while the larger case develops. And Maya learns. She reads her mother's journals cover to cover, absorbing years of careful record-keeping. She studies the aquifer maps, understanding for the first time the scope of what lies beneath her land. She walks the property with Frank Patterson, who teaches her to see what her mother saw: the patterns of water flow, the places where the aquifer comes closest to the surface, the value that can be measured in simple dollars. But through it all, a question nags at her. Who sent the anonymous medical records? Who wants her to know the truth about her mother's harassment? The answer comes on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Maya is in the barn, sorting through old equipment, when she hears someone call her name. A woman stands in the barn doorway, maybe 40, wearing nurse's scrubs under a raincoat. Her face is vaguely familiar, but Maya can't place it. "I'm Sarah Mitchell," the woman says. "We met once, a long time ago. I was a social worker with CPS 19 years ago. I was involved in your case." Maya feels her body tense. "You helped take me away from my mother." "I did, and I've regretted it every day since." Sarah steps inside, water dripping from her coat. "I was young, new to the job, and I trusted the system. When we received complaints about your mother's fitness, I investigated. I saw a woman struggling financially, working long hours, raising a daughter alone. The report said you were in danger, being neglected, living in unsafe conditions. Those reports were lies. I know that now. But then, I believed I was helping you. I believed removing you from the farm was the right thing to do." Sarah's voice breaks. "I didn't understand I was being used, that the complaints were manufactured to pressure your mother into selling her land. How did you figure it out?" "Years later, I started seeing patterns. Other CPS cases involving farms with aquifer access. Other single mothers or elderly farmers suddenly reported for various violations. And many of those cases involved properties Vance Development later acquired." Sarah pulls out a folder. "I've been documenting on my own time. I'm risking my job by being here, but your mother deserves justice. You deserve to know the truth." Inside the folder are case files, redacted for privacy, but the pattern is clear. 14 CPS investigations over 20 years, all involving properties later purchased by Vance Development. All cases where children were temporarily or permanently removed, where parents were deemed unfit, where families were broken apart. "How many kids?" Maya asks, her voice hollow. 14 children, removed from their homes. Most were eventually returned after property sales were finalized. But some, like you, never went back. The trauma of separation, the fracturing of families, it was all just collateral damage in Vance's acquisition strategy. Maya feels rage building, hot and righteous. "Can we use this in court?" "I don't know. The files are protected by confidentiality laws. But I'm willing to testify about the pattern. I'm willing to risk everything to stop this from happening to more families." When Margaret hears about Sarah's testimony, her eyes light up. "This changes everything. We can prove systematic abuse of government systems. We can show Vance weaponized child protective services for corporate gain. This isn't just property rights anymore. This is corruption, conspiracy, civil rights violations." That evening, Maya sits on the porch with her mother's journal, reading the final entries by fading sunlight. Her mother had known, had understood that she was fighting something bigger than a simple land dispute, had kept fighting even when it cost her health, her daughter, nearly everything. "They think they can wait me out," her mother had written. "Think I'll die or give up, and then they'll get what they want. But I prepared everything for Maya. She's stronger than they know, stronger than she knows. When she comes home, she'll finish this fight, and she'll win." Maya closes a journal and looks out at the cornfields, at the land that 3 generations of her family had protected. She'd come here planning to sell and run. Instead, she's staying to fight. But she's not just fighting for herself anymore. She's fighting for 14 other children who were torn from their families. For neighbors like Frank Patterson, who resisted pressure for decades. For every family threatened by corporations who see water as commodity instead of life. Her mother had died protecting this land. Maya won't let that sacrifice be for nothing. The county courthouse is packed. Maya has never seen this many people in one place in Millbrook. Farmers in work clothes sitting beside environmental activists in branded T-shirts, lawyers in expensive suits, journalists with recording equipment, local residents who've come to witness what everyone's calling the trial of the decade. It's been 3 months since Maya first walked into her mother's farmhouse. 3 months of legal preparation, document gathering, testimony collection. Margaret Reeves had filed a lawsuit 6 weeks ago. Chen versus Vance Development Corporation et al. The et al. Included Vance Corp Industries, Richard Vance personally, former county supervisor David Mitchell, Sarah Mitchell's father-in-law, now retired, and 3 other county officials who participated in what Margaret called a systematic conspiracy to defraud property owners of their land and water rights. The defendants had fought back hard, teams of corporate lawyers filing motion after motion to dismiss, private investigators digging into Maya's past, looking for anything to discredit her, pressure on witnesses to recant. Frank Patterson's barn burned down under suspicious circumstances 2 weeks ago. Insurance called it electrical, but Frank knew better. But they'd underestimated Margaret Reeves, and they'd underestimated the anger of families who've been quietly suffering Vance's predatory practices for decades. The case attracted attention beyond Millbrook. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch ran a front-page story. Corporate water grab, how one company used Child Protective Services to steal land. National environmental groups filed amicus briefs. A documentary filmmaker started following Maya, capturing what she called the last stand of family farmers against corporate water privatization. And now, finally, they're in court. Judge Patricia Holloway presides, a woman in her 60s known for being fair, but exacting. She denied Vance's motions to dismiss, ruled that the case had sufficient merit to proceed, and set an aggressive schedule. This isn't a jury trial. It's a bench trial, meaning Judge Holloway will decide the outcome herself. Maya sits at the plaintiff's table beside Margaret, wearing the only professional clothes she owns, a blazer borrowed from Dorothy, slacks she bought at Goodwill. Behind them, the gallery is filled with supporters. Frank Patterson, his arm still bandaged from fighting the barn fire. Dorothy Klein from the library, James Merritt, Sarah Mitchell, who'd resigned from CPS rather than be silenced about what she knew, a dozen other farmers who'd faced similar pressure from Vance over the years. Across the aisle, Richard Vance sits surrounded by his legal team, 4 attorneys from a Kansas City firm that charges $800 an hour. He's wearing an expensive suit and an expression of barely contained contempt. He tried to settle twice, once for $5 million, then for $8 million plus legal fees. Margaret had refused both times. This isn't about money, she told Maya. This is about justice, about making sure Vance can't do this to anyone else. Judge Holloway gavels the court to order. We're here in the matter of Chen versus Vance Development Corporation. Counsel, opening statements. Margaret stands, and the courtroom quiets. She's wearing a gray suit, her steel hair pulled back, her voice clear and commanding. Your Honor, this case is about theft. Not the obvious kind. Not someone breaking into a home or robbing a bank. This is sophisticated, systematic theft spanning 3 decades. Theft of land, theft of water rights, and most egregiously, theft of family bonds to the weaponization of government child protective services. She walks to a display board showing a map of the county. Red pins mark properties Vance Development has acquired over the past 30 years. Each of these pins represents a family, a farm, a life's work, and in 14 cases, a family separated by CPS investigations that were triggered by false reports from parties connected to Vance Development. The lead defense attorney, Harrison Price, objects. Speculation, Your Honor. There's no evidence connecting CPS cases to my client's business practices. We'll present that evidence, Your Honor, Margaret says calmly. Documented patterns, witness testimony, and internal emails from Vance Corp Industries discussing strategies for accelerating property acquisitions through increased county oversight. Judge Holloway nods. I'll allow it. Continue, Ms. Reeves. Margaret returns to the map. This case centers on one property, the Chun family farm, 650 hectares that sits above the largest undeveloped aquifer in this region. Water rights worth conservatively $15 to $20 million. Eleanor, Chen's grandfather claimed this land in 1952. Her daughter Maya stands to inherit it. But for 30 years, Vance Development has pursued this property through intimidation, harassment, and abuse of governmental systems. She pulls up a timeline on a screen. 1987, Thomas Vance, Richard Vance's father, makes first offer to purchase Chen property. Refused. 1989, property line disputes filed. 1992, water rights challenges. 1995, environmental complaints. Each time Eleanor Chen prevails, but each legal battle drains her resources. The timeline continues. 2004, CPS investigation triggered by anonymous complaints. Eleanor Chen's 12-year-old daughter removed from her care. 2005, property taxes reassessed, forcing partial foreclosure. Vance Development purchases foreclosed western parcels. Margaret's voice hardens. 2023, Eleanor Chen dies. Her daughter returns to claim her inheritance. Richard Vance appears at her door within 24 hours, offering to relieve her the burden. When refused, tax reassessments, foreclosure threats, and legal pressure resume immediately. She turns to face Richard Vance directly. This isn't business. This is predatory theft. And we're here to stop it. Harrison Price's opening statement is smooth, corporate, dismissive. He portrays Vance Development as a responsible company making legitimate business offers, portraying Eleanor Chen as a troubled woman who made poor financial decisions, suggesting Maya is being manipulated by attorneys seeking a big payout. Property ownership requires responsibility, Price says. Mrs. Chen failed to maintain her property adequately, failed to pay taxes on time, failed to manage the business of farming. Vance Development made generous offers to purchase land she couldn't maintain. That's not theft, that's commerce. Judge Holloway listens impassively, taking notes. The first witness Margaret calls is Frank Patterson. He takes a stand slowly, his farmer's hands gripping the rail. Margaret walks him through his history. 40 years farming adjacent to the Chen property, his friendship with Eleanor Chen, his own struggles with Vance Development. Mr. Patterson, did Vance Development ever make offers to purchase your property? 7 times over 15 years. And did you accept any of these offers? No, ma'am. What happened after you refused? Frank's jaw tightens. Harassment, property tax reassessments, complaints filed with the county about my equipment storage, my irrigation practices, the condition of my barn. Every complaint was investigated. Everyone was found to be without merit, but the process cost me time and money each time. Were these complaints legitimate in your assessment? No. They were designed to make me give up, to make farming so expensive and legally complicated that selling seemed easier. Price cross-examines, trying to suggest Frank's problems were due to his own poor management. But Frank holds firm, his decades of farming experience and meticulous record-keeping making Price's insinuations ring hollow. The next witness is Dorothy Klein. She testifies about Eleanor Chen's research in the library, the documents she preserved, the patterns she'd identified. Eleanor spent hundreds of hours documenting Vance Development's acquisition strategy. She created a database of every property they'd purchased, cross-referenced with county records of complaints, investigations, and assessments. The pattern was undeniable. Margaret introduces Eleanor's research as evidence. Thick binders of documentation, showing property after property following the same pattern. Vance offer, refusal, harassment, eventual sale. Then Sarah Mitchell takes the stand. The courtroom goes silent as she's sworn in. Sarah looks terrified but determined. Margaret guides her gently through her testimony. Ms. Mitchell, you worked for Child Protective Services from 2001 to earlier this year. Is that correct? Yes. And in that capacity, you were involved in the investigation of Eleanor Chen in 2004? I was the caseworker assigned to Maya Chen's case. Can you describe the initial complaints that triggered the investigation? Sarah takes a breath. Anonymous reports claimed Eleanor Chen was neglecting her daughter, allowing unsafe work conditions, inadequate supervision, signs of poverty affecting the child's welfare. Were these complaints substantiated? At the time, I believe they were. I saw a woman struggling financially, working long hours on a farm. I saw a child help with farm work that seemed dangerous to me. I I recommended removal. And what have you learned since then? Sarah's voice strengthens. I learned that I was used, that the complaints were manufactured to pressure Mrs. Chen into selling her property. Over my 15 years at CPS, I noticed a pattern. Certain properties, certain families, would receive sudden clusters of anonymous complaints. When I started tracking which properties later sold to Vance Development, the correlation was overwhelming. Margaret displays a chart. How many CPS investigations in this county between 2001 and 2023 involved properties that Vance Development later acquired? 14 that I can document. There may be others. And how many of these investigations resulted in permanent removal of children from their homes? 3. Maya Chen's case was one of them. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Judge Holloway gavels for silence. Price's cross-examination is brutal. He attacks Sarah's credibility, suggests she's bitter about being fired. She resigned, she corrects firmly, implies she's fabricating patterns that don't exist. Ms. Mitchell, isn't it true that CPS investigates any complaint received, regardless of source? Yes. So the fact that anonymous complaints were filed isn't unusual? No. But the clustering of complaints around specific properties with aquifer access is unusual. The timing of complaints immediately after refused sale offers is unusual. The pattern is unmistakable, or it's confirmation bias. You saw what you wanted to see. I saw 14 families torn apart and 14 properties acquired by your client. That's not bias, that's evidence. Margaret calls James Mayer to testify about the estate, the debts, the suspicious timing of tax reassessments. Then the county tax assessor, squirming as Margaret forces him to explain why Maya's property taxes increased 70% within days of reclaiming her inheritance. Standard reassessment based on development potential, he mutters. Development potential for a working farm with a 200-year-old farmhouse? Market values fluctuate. They fluctuate dramatically and immediately after the owner refuses to sell to Vance Development? Quite a coincidence. By the end of the second day, Margaret has built a comprehensive picture. Decades of systematic harassment, weaponization of government systems, deliberate targeting of families for financial gain. On the third day, she calls her expert witness, Dr. Patricia Moore, a hydrologist from the University of Missouri. Dr. Moore testifies about the aquifer beneath the Chen property. This is one of the largest undeveloped freshwater aquifers in Missouri. Current estimates suggest capacity of over 15 billion gallons. At current market rates for commercial water extraction and sales, the lifetime value exceeds $20 million, potentially much more as water scarcity increases. Dr. Moore, if this aquifer were to be commercially exploited, water extracted and bottled for sale, what would be the environmental impact? Significant. The aquifer feeds several smaller tributary systems that support agricultural irrigation for farms throughout this region. Aggressive commercial extraction could deplete the aquifer within 15 to 20 years, destroying the agricultural base that depends on it. So control of this aquifer isn't just valuable financially. It gives control over water security for this entire region? Exactly. Whoever controls the Chen property's water rights effectively controls agricultural viability for dozens of farms. Margaret lets that sink in. Then she introduces Vance Corp Industries' bottled water business, Heartland Springs, and shows the court market materials boasting about pure Missouri aquifer water. She presents sales figures showing millions in annual revenue. Your Honor, Vance Development wasn't just buying land. They were monopolizing water resources, extracting them for commercial sale, and destroying the agricultural communities that depend on that water. Price objects strenuously, argues that legal water extraction is not the same as theft, that Vance Corp Industries operates within all environmental regulations. But the damage is done. The courtroom has seen the scope of what's at stake. On the fourth day, Margaret calls Maya to the stand. Maya's hands shake as she's sworn in. She's given depositions, talked to lawyers, prepared for this moment. But sitting in the witness box with Richard Vance's attorneys staring at her, with her entire future depending on the next hour, terror threatens to overwhelm her. Margaret's voice is gentle. Maya, Can you tell the court about your childhood on the farm? Maya takes a breath. It was happy. My mother worked hard. We didn't have much money, but we had land. We had each other. She taught me about farming, about respecting water and soil. She taught me that some things can't be measured in dollars. What happened when you were 12? Social services came, took me away, said my mother was unfit, that I wasn't safe. Maya's voice cracks. I didn't understand. I wasn't being abused. I was being raised, being taught skills, being loved. But they didn't see it that way. Did you ever return to the farm? No. I was placed in foster care, moved from home to home. By the time I was 18 and could legally return, I was too angry, too hurt. I blamed my mother for losing me, even though it wasn't her fault. When did you learn the truth? When she died, and I found her journals. When I found documents showing the harassment, the pressure, the complaints designed to break her. When I understood she'd been fighting alone for 19 years to protect land and water she believed I'd someday come back to claim. Margaret introduces Eleanor's journals as evidence. The courtroom is silent as Margaret reads passages aloud. A mother's grief, her determination, her faith that her daughter would understand someday. Maya, why didn't you sell the property when you inherited it? You could have taken Richard Vance's offer, walked away with millions. Because my mother died protecting this land. Because I learned that what looks like stubbornness was actually courage. She wasn't just defending property. She was defending water rights that sustained this entire community. She was standing against a corporation that uses child protective services as a weapon against families. I couldn't let her sacrifice be for nothing. Price's cross-examination is predictably harsh. He paints Maya as an absentee daughter who abandoned her mother, who only showed interest in the farm when money was involved, who's being manipulated by attorneys. Miss Chen, you didn't visit your mother once in 19 years. Not once. And now you expect this court to believe you care about her legacy. I was 12 when they took me away. I didn't have the power to visit. By the time I did, I was too broken to face what I'd lost. Yet you claim to understand your mother's wishes? I understand them because I read 3 years of journals where she documented everything, where she wrote that she hoped I'd forgive her for losing me, that she hoped I'd come home, that she believed I'd finish what she started. I'm honoring her wishes by being here, or you're honoring an attorney's wishes to pursue a lucrative lawsuit. I'm honoring my mother's memory, something your client prevented me from doing for 19 years. The exchange is heated, emotional. When Maya finally steps down, she's shaking but feels lighter somehow. She said what needed saying. The truth is out. On the 5th day, Margaret calls her final witness, a man Maya doesn't recognize. He's middle-aged, wearing a rumpled suit, looking nervous. Please state your name for the record. Marcus Webb. And your employment, Mr. Webb? Until last month, I was vice president of acquisitions for Vance Corp Industries. The courtroom erupts. Richard Vance's face goes white. Price jumps up, objecting, demanding a recess to consult with his client. Judge Holloway allows a brief recess. When they return, Price looks like he's been punched. Margaret resumes. Mr. Webb, why are you testifying today? Because I can't live with what I've been part of. Vance Corp's acquisition strategy isn't just aggressive. It's predatory and illegal. I have documents, emails, recorded conversations proving the company deliberately targeted families with aquifer-rich properties and used any means necessary, including manipulation of government agencies, to force sales. Do you have specific knowledge of the Chen property? Yes. Thomas Vance identified the Chen aquifer in 1987 as a priority acquisition. When Eleanor Chen refused to sell, he instructed our team to apply pressure through any legal channels available. That included property line disputes, environmental complaints, and Webb pauses, visibly struggling, and encouraging county officials to investigate child welfare concerns. Did Thomas Vance specifically instruct anyone to file false CPS reports? Not in those words. He said, single mothers are vulnerable. If there are concerns about child safety, those concerns should be brought to appropriate authorities. He provided County Supervisor David Mitchell with a list of observations about the Chen farm: equipment near the house, a child working in fields, signs of financial stress. Mitchell filed complaints as a concerned citizen. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible mountain stories like this one. And after Maya Chen was removed from her mother's care, what happened? Thomas Vance expected Eleanor Chen to collapse, to sell quickly. Instead, she fought harder. She started documenting our harassment, filing counter-complaints, building a case. Thomas realized she'd become a problem that couldn't be easily solved. What do you mean by that? Webb looks directly at Richard Vance. Thomas Vance died in 2013. But before he died, he told his son Richard to finish what I started, get the Chen property whatever it takes. Richard has pursued that goal for over a decade. Price is on his feet, objecting, calling for mistrial, claiming witness tampering. But Webb produces a flash drive containing thousands of documents, internal Vance Corp emails discussing acquisition strategies, communications with county officials, marketing plans for Heartland Springs bottled water that specifically mention the Chen aquifer as future primary extraction site. Margaret introduces the documents into evidence. The case is no longer, he said, she said. It's documented conspiracy. Richard Vance leaves the courtroom during the afternoon recess and doesn't return. Price requests a continuance. Judge Holloway denies it. On the sixth day, closing arguments. Price does his best to salvage the case. He argues that aggressive business practices aren't illegal, that county officials made independent decisions about tax assessments and CPS investigations. That correlation isn't causation. But his arguments sound hollow after Marcus Webb's testimony, after Sarah Mitchell's patterns, after the weight of evidence showing systematic abuse spanning 3 decades. Margaret's closing is powerful and concise. Your Honor, this case asks a fundamental question. Can corporations weaponize government systems to steal from families? Can child protective services be manipulated to separate children from parents for financial gain? Can tax assessors and county officials be influenced to harass property owners into surrender? The evidence shows the answer is yes. These things can happen and did happen. For 30 years, Vance Development pursued the Chen family's land and water rights through intimidation, harassment, and corruption. They separated a 12-year-old child from her mother. They drove Eleanor Chen into poverty and early death. And where her daughter inherited what they couldn't steal, they immediately resumed the same predatory tactics. But Maya Chen refused to surrender. She honored her mother's courage by standing here today, demanding justice not just for herself, but for 14 other families torn apart by Vance's greed. She's asking this court to say, clearly, some things matter more than corporate profit. Water rights belong to communities, not corporations. And using government systems to destroy families is not business, it's criminal. Judge Holloway takes extensive notes. Then she adjourns, saying she'll issue a ruling within 30 days. Section 6. The victory resolution achieved. 23 days later, Maya receives a call. She's in the cornfield, her cornfield, working with Frank Patterson to repair irrigation lines. In 3 months, she's learned more about farming than she absorbed in her entire childhood. Frank has been patient, teaching her water management, soil testing, equipment maintenance. The land is starting to respond, showing signs of recovery. Her phone rings. Margaret Reeves. Maya, the ruling came down. Can you get to my office? Tell me now. Get to my office. You want to see this. Maya drives to St. Louis in a daze, Frank riding shotgun. They arrive at Margaret's office to find Dorothy, James Merritt, Sarah Mitchell, and a dozen other supporters already gathered. Margaret hands Maya the ruling. It's 47 pages long. The first paragraph tells her everything she needs to know. The court finds in favor of plaintiff Maya Chen on all counts. Defendants Vance Development Corporation, Vance Corp Industries, Richard Vance, and named county officials are hereby enjoined from any further contact with or action against plaintiff's property. Furthermore, the court finds evidence of systematic conspiracy to defraud, abuse of governmental systems, and civil rights violations. Maya's hands shake as she reads. Judge Holloway has ruled comprehensively, not just in Maya's favor, but with scorching condemnation of Vance's practices. The ruling invalidates the tax reassessment, orders the county to investigate all 14 CPS cases connected to Vance properties, requires Vance Development to cease all acquisition activities in the county pending independent review, and awards Maya compensatory damages of $2.3 million plus legal fees. But the final section is what makes Maya's breath catch. The court further orders that the aquifer beneath plaintiff's property be designated a protected water resource under Missouri environmental conservation law. Commercial extraction rights are hereby permanently restricted to sustainable agricultural use only. This designation ensures that water resources critical to regional agricultural sustainability cannot be monopolized for commercial bottled water production. Judge Holloway hasn't just protected Maya's property. She's protected the entire aquifer system, ensuring it can't be commercially exploited by anyone. We won, Margaret says simply. On every count. Complete victory. The room erupts. Frank hugs Maya so hard he lifts her off the ground. Dorothy cries. Sarah Mitchell's shoulders shake with relief. Her testimony had vindicated her conscience and helped protect other families from similar abuse. Over the following weeks, the implications unfold. Richard Vance faces criminal investigation for conspiracy and fraud. Vance Corp Industries stock plummets as investors learn about the lawsuit and the company's predatory practices. Several county officials resign or are removed from office. The Post-Dispatch runs a follow-up story. Judge rules corporation weaponized child services to steal land. National media picks it up. Environmental groups celebrate the aquifer protection ruling as precedent-setting. And Maya inherits not just vindication, but resources. The damage award pays off all her mother's debts with money left over. The county forgives 3 years of back property taxes as part of the settlement. A local agricultural cooperative offers low-interest loans to restore the farm's equipment and infrastructure. But the most meaningful change is personal. 6 months after the ruling, Maya stands in the cornfield with Frank, examining the new irrigation system they've installed. The field is planted properly now, neat rows stretching toward the horizon. The equipment runs smoothly. The barn has been repaired, painted bright red again. Your mother will be proud, Frank says. I hope so. I know so. You did what she couldn't. You finished the fight. That evening, Maya hosts a gathering at the farmhouse. 20 people crowd into the living room and spill onto porch. Frank and his wife, Dorothy from the library, James Merritt, Sarah Mitchell and her family, Marcus Webb, who'd lost his corporate job but gained his integrity, farmers who'd testified, reporters who'd covered the story, supporters who'd stood with her. Margaret Reeves raises a glass. To Eleanor Chun, who never stopped fighting, and to her daughter Maya, who honored her mother's courage by finishing what she started. They toast. Maya feels tears on her cheeks but doesn't wipe them away. Later, after everyone leaves, she sits alone on the porch with her mother's journal. She's read it cover to cover a dozen times, but tonight she turns to the final entry again. If you're reading this, my darling daughter, it means I'm gone. It means you came home. I always knew you would. They took you from me. But they couldn't take my faith that someday you'd understand why I fought so hard to keep this land. It's not about money, Maya. It's about legacy, about water that sustains life, about standing against people who think power gives them the right to take what belongs to others. You're stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and you have everything you need to finish this fight. I love you. I've always loved you, and I'll love you forever, even from wherever I am now. Finish what I started, protect what matters, and know that you made your mother proud. Always, Mom. Maya closes the journal and looks out at the land. Her land now, protected land, land that will sustain farmers for generations because she and her mother refused to surrender. The corn rustles in the evening breeze. Somewhere a hawk cries. The sun sets golden over fields that are healing, over a farmhouse that's becoming a home again. Maya thinks about the 12-year-old girl who was torn from this place, who spent 19 years believing she'd lost her mother's love. She thinks about the woman her mother became, Fierce, determined, fighting alone because she believed her daughter would return. And she thinks about herself now, not the broken foster kid or the struggling waitress in Kansas City, not even just the farmer learning to work land. She's become the keeper of her mother's legacy, the protector of water that sustains community, the woman who stood against corporate greed and won. She'd come here planning to sell and run. Instead, she stayed and fought. And in fighting, she found something she'd lost 19 years ago, herself. The girl her mother raised, the daughter her mother believed in. The farmhouse door is open behind her, light spilling out onto the porch. Inside, the home her mother built waits. Imperfect, scarred by years of struggle, but standing. Like the Chen family itself, battered but unbroken. Maya stands and walks inside, closing the door on the past and opening it to the future. Section 7. The New Life, Epilogue in Future. 1 year later. Maya wakes to birdsong and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, she lies still, appreciating the simple miracle of waking in her own bed, in her own house, on her own land. No eviction notices, no foreclosure threats, no Richard Vance demanding she surrender what belongs to her. The farmhouse is transformed. Not fancy. She's poured most of her resources into the land and equipment, but solid. New roof, repaired porch, windows that don't leak. The interior is clean, organized, filled with her mother's furniture and her own additions. Photographs on the mantel show 4 generations of Chen family farmers. And one new photo, taken 6 months ago. Maya is standing in the cornfield at harvest, grinning, covered in dust and sweat and pride. She makes breakfast, eggs from the chicken she raised, bread from grain she grew. The kitchen that once felt like a museum of grief is now a working space, lived in and loved. Outside, the farm hums with quiet industry. Maya employs 3 part-time workers now, local teenagers learning agriculture, and Tom Henderson, a retired farmer from up the road, who wanted something useful to do with his time. Together they brought the cornfields back to productivity, diversified into soybeans, established a kitchen garden that supplies half the county's farmers market. But the most important work isn't visible from the surface. It's the aquifer management system Maya developed with help from Dr. Patricia Moore, the hydrologist who testified at trial. Together they created a sustainable water use model that ensures the aquifer will never be depleted, that provides irrigation for Maya's farm and access for neighbors who need it. Frank Patterson stops by most mornings. At 72, he's teaching Maya everything he knows before as he says, "The good Lord calls me home." They walk the property line between their farms, checking the shared irrigation system, discussing crop rotation and soil health. "You've done good work here," Frank says, surveying the healthy corn. "Your mother would be amazed at what you've accomplished in 1 year. I had good teachers. You had determination. That matters more." They walk back toward the farmhouse, where Dorothy's car is pulling into the driveway. She's become a regular visitor, bringing books Maya requests about sustainable farming and water conservation. But more than that, bringing stories about Eleanor Chen, filling in the 19 years Maya missed, helping her understand a woman her mother became. "I found something you'll want to see," Dorothy says, pulling a folder from her bag. Inside is a newspaper article from 1995. Local woman wins water rights case. Maya reads it carefully. Her mother had sued a neighboring farm that was overpumping the aquifer, threatening the water supply for the entire region. Eleanor had won, establishing precedent for sustainable use requirements. The case Judge Holloway had cited in her ruling protecting the aquifer. "Your mother was fighting this battle long before you knew it existed," Dorothy says. She understood that protecting water wasn't just about her farm. It was about everyone who depends on this land. Maya tucks the article carefully into her growing collection of her mother's history. Each piece helps her understand the woman she'd been too young to fully know, the fighter she'd grown up to become herself. That afternoon, Maya drives to the elementary school in Millbrook. She's speaking to the 6th grade class about water conservation and sustainable farming. It's become a regular gig. Margaret Reeves helped her develop an educational program that's now used in 3 counties. The kids listen with surprising attention as Maya explains aquifers, water tables, the difference between sustainable use and commercial depletion. She shows them the maps of their region, explains how the water beneath their feet connects all of them. My mother understood something important, Maya tells them. Water doesn't belong to whoever owns the land above it. Water belongs to the whole community, to the future. Our job is to protect it, so your kids and their kids will have what we have. A girl in the front row raises her hand. Is it true that a big company tried to steal your farm? They tried to steal the water under my farm, but they didn't succeed because people stood together. My mother, neighbors, lawyers, regular folks who understood what was at stake. One person fighting alone can be overwhelmed, but a community fighting together is powerful. After presentation, a teacher pulls Maya aside. Thank you for doing this. These kids need to understand that ordinary people can stand up to corporations, that they don't have to accept injustice as inevitable. Driving home, Maya thinks about that word, ordinary. She'd spent most of her life feeling less than ordinary, a foster kid, a nobody, someone to be overlooked and forgotten. Her mother had probably felt the same way. Just a farmer, just a single mother, just one woman against the corporate machine. But they've been wrong. Ordinary people are the ones who change things, who refuse to surrender, who fight not because they're guaranteed to win, but because some battles matter too much to walk away from. The sun is setting as Maya pulls into her driveway. She parks and sits for a moment, looking at the farmhouse. Lights glow warm in windows. The barn stands solid and red. The cornfields stretch away, healthy and producing. She thinks about the woman she was a year ago, broken, angry, planning to sell everything and disappear back into her small Kansas City life. That woman is gone, replaced by someone she's still getting to know. A farmer, a water rights advocate, a woman who honors her mother's memory by living the values Eleanor Chen fought her whole life to protect. Maya's phone buzzes. Text from Margaret. Documentary premieres tonight at 8. PBS. Get ready for more attention. The documentary crew had finished their film, Water's Worth, the Chen family fight against corporate greed. Margaret had screened it privately for Maya last week. It's powerful, emotional, and according to early reviews, likely to generate national conversation about water rights and corporate land acquisition. Maya texts back, ready as I'll ever be. She walks to the porch and sits in the chair that used to be her mother's. The evening air is cool, carrying the scent of growing things. In the distance, she can hear Frank's tractor working his fields. Closer, cicadas beginning their evening chorus. Her phone rings. Unknown number. She almost doesn't answer, but curiosity wins. Maya Chen, speaking. My name is Jennifer Torres. I'm calling from California. I saw news coverage of your case, and I think Vance Development did to my family what they did to yours. Maya's heart clenches. Tell me what happened. Jennifer talks for 20 minutes. A farm in Northern California. Water rights. Harassment. CPS investigation that took her brother away. Eventual forced sale. That was 15 years ago. Jennifer says, I was too young to fight it then. But seeing what you accomplished, I wondered, is it too late for us? I don't know, Maya says honestly, but I know someone who might. Hold on. She conference calls Margaret Reeves. Over the next hour, they talk through Jennifer's case. Margaret takes notes, asks detailed questions, finally says, this sounds actionable. If you're willing to pursue it, I'm willing to take the case. After they hang up, Maya sits quietly on her porch. One case leads to another. One family's fight becomes inspiration for others. Justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. She thinks about the 14 families Sarah Mitchell identified. Wonders how many more exist across the country. Families broken by corporate greed, wrapped in legal manipulation. Her phone buzzes again. Another message from Margaret. You started something bigger than you know. Hope you're ready for what comes next. Maya looks out at her land, at the legacy her mother died protecting, at the future she's building on that foundation. Ready? Maybe not completely. But willing? Absolutely. The sun sets behind a western tree line, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Maya sits on her porch, Her mother's porch, her porch, the porch of the Chen family farmhouse that will stand for generations, and feel something settle in her chest. Peace. Purpose. The understanding that she's exactly where she's meant to be. She'd been an orphan, alone in the world, disconnected from her roots. Now she's a keeper of her family's legacy, the protector of land and water that sustains community, the woman who proved that ordinary people can fight corporate giants and win. Her mother had written in that final journal entry, "You're stronger than you know, braver than you believe." Eleanor Chen had been right. She'd been right about everything. Maya stands and walks inside, turning on lights against the gathering darkness. The farmhouse glows warm and welcoming. Home, not just a building or a piece of property, but the physical manifestation of everything her mother fought for, everything Maya has learned to protect. Tomorrow she'll wake early and check the irrigation system. She'll meet with Dr. Moore about the aquifer monitoring program. She'll talk to 3 more families who've reached out asking for help fighting similar battles. She'll do the endless work of farming, difficult, rewarding, never finished. But tonight, she allows herself to simply be, to sit in her mother's house and feel the presence of generations of women who refuse to surrender. Her great-grandmother who helped her husband claim this land. Her grandmother who kept it productive through drought and depression. Her mother who defended it against predators disguised as businessmen. And now Maya, who finished what they started. The documentary airs at 8. By 9, her phone is exploding with messages. By morning, the story will have reached millions. More families will call. More fights will begin. But that's tomorrow. Tonight, Maya Chen sits in her farmhouse on her 650 hectares of protected land, above an aquifer that will sustain life for generations, and knows with absolute certainty that she's home. Really, truly home. And no one, no corporation, no developer, no force on earth will ever take that away again. The conference room at the University of Missouri School of Law is packed beyond capacity. Students sit on the floor, lean against walls, crowd the doorway. They've come to hear Maya Chen speak, the woman who took on a corporate giant and won, who's become something of a folk hero in environmental law circles. Maya stands at the podium, still uncomfortable with public speaking but getting better. 6 months of interviews, presentations, and advocacy work have forced her to find her voice. "I didn't set out to become an activist," she tells the crowd. "I came back to my mother's farm planning to sign papers and leave. I was running from my past, from pain, from the complicated reality of being a daughter who'd been separated from her mother for 19 years. She clicks to the next slide, a photograph of Eleanor Chen standing in the cornfield, weather hands on her hips, eyes squinting against the sun, looking every inch the fighter she was. My mother spent 30 years fighting alone. She died before seeing justice. But she prepared everything for me, documents, evidence, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to the truth. She believed I'd come home, believed I'd understand, believed I'd finish what she started. The next slide shows the farmhouse as Maya first found it, peeling paint, sagging porch, windows dark with abandonment. This is what it looked like when I arrived. A wreck, overwhelming. I almost walked away a dozen times. But I kept finding pieces of my mother's story. Each piece made me angrier. Each piece made me understand what she'd been protecting wasn't just land or water. It was principle. The idea that families have rights corporations can't simply purchase or manipulate away. Another slide. The courtroom, Judge Holloway at the bench. We won our case. But victory in court is just the beginning. Since then, I've been contacted by 63 families across 12 states. 63 families who face similar tactics, harassment, weaponization of government systems, predatory acquisition strategies targeting land with valuable water resources. The number makes the audience murmur. Maya lets it sink in. Van's development wasn't unique. They were just one example of a pattern that's happening nationwide. As water becomes scarcer and more valuable, corporations are using increasingly aggressive tactics to acquire water rights. They target elderly farmers, single parents, families they perceive as vulnerable. They use legal complexity as a weapon, knowing most people can't afford to fight back. She clicks to a map of the United States with pins marking locations. These pins represent cases where families have reached out to me. Red pins are cases where corporate pressure led to forced sales. Yellow pins are ongoing battles. Green pins are families who successfully resisted. There are far more red pins than green. The legal victory we achieved in Missouri has given other families hope and legal precedent. But hope isn't enough. We need systemic change, laws protecting family water rights, restrictions on commercial aquifer exploitation, penalties for companies that weaponize government agencies. A student raises her hand. What can we do? How do we fight something this big? Maya smiles. Exactly what you're doing. Learn the law. Understand water rights. Become the kind of lawyers who take cases not because they're profitable, but because they matter. My attorney, Margaret Reeves, took my case on contingency when I had nothing. She believed in the principle more than the payout. After the presentation, students crowd around Maya with questions. A young woman pushes forward, tears in her eyes. My grandmother lost her farm in Colorado 3 years ago. Water rights dispute with a development company. She died 6 months later. Just gave up. I wish I'd known about your case, about the possibility of fighting back. Maya takes her hand. I'm sorry about your grandmother, but it's not too late. Colorado has different water laws than Missouri, but the principles are similar. If you want to pursue it, I can connect you with attorneys who specialize in this work. The young woman nods, wiping her eyes. I want to be one of those attorneys. I start law school here next fall. I'm going to specialize in water rights and environmental law. Good, Maya says firmly. We need you. Later that evening, Maya has dinner with Margaret Reeves at a restaurant near campus. They become not just attorney and client, but friends. The age difference, Margaret is 20 years older, doesn't matter. They're bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. You're good at this, Margaret says, gesturing with her wine glass. Public speaking, advocacy, inspiring people. You found your calling. I'm still a farmer first. You can be both. The farm grounds you, gives you credibility. But your story has power beyond your property. You're showing people that fighting back is possible. Maya picks at her salad. Sometimes I feel like a fraud. I won my case because I had you, because Marcus Webb turned whistleblower, because Judge Holloway was willing to see the pattern. What about families who don't have those advantages? That's why we're building a network. 3 law firms now specialize in taking these cases on contingency. We've established a legal defense fund for families who can't afford representation. Environmental groups are developing educational materials about water rights. You started something, Maya, but it's becoming bigger than any one person. Margaret's phone buzzes. She checks it and smiles. Speaking of which, Jennifer Torres just won her preliminary injunction. The California court blocked Vance Development's attempt to access aquifer water on her family's former property. It's not a full victory yet, but it's progress. Maya feels warmth spread through her chest. Jennifer Torres had been the first person to reach out after the documentary aired. Her case was complicated. The property had been sold years ago, but Margaret had found angles to challenge the validity of that sale. Now, Jennifer was getting her chance at justice. How many active cases do we have now? Maya asks. 12, with another 8 in preliminary research phase. Not all will go to trial. Some companies are settling once they realize we have teeth. Vance Development has settled 3 cases in the past 4 months rather than face another public trial. Are they changing their practices? Margaret's expression darkens. Changing how obviously they operate. Maybe, but Vance Corp Industries is still in business, still acquiring properties. Richard Vance stepped down as president but remains on the board. They're more careful now, but the fundamental business model hasn't changed. So we haven't really won. We've won battles. The war continues. Margaret leans forward. But here's what matters. Families now know they can fight back. County officials think twice before filing spurious complaints. CPS agencies are scrutinizing anonymous reports more carefully. We've created accountability where none existed. That's not nothing, Maya. Back at the farm that night, Maya walks the property under stars so bright they seem close enough to touch. The isolation that once felt oppressive now feels peaceful. This is her sanctuary, her headquarters, her home. She checks the new irrigation system, running her hands over pipes that bring water up from the aquifer in carefully measured amounts. Dr. Patricia Moore helped design it. Sustainable extraction that never takes more than the aquifer naturally replenishes. It's become a model that other farms are studying, adapting, implementing. The corn is harvested now, fields lying fallow until spring planting. But the winter wheat is coming in beautifully, and the greenhouse Tom Henderson helped her build is producing year-round vegetables. The farm is profitable for the first time in 2 decades. Maya's phone buzzes. Text from Frank Patterson. Coyotes near the north fence. Thought you should know. She texts back. Thanks. I'll check it tomorrow. Frank has become something between a mentor and a father figure. His wife Emma has taken Maya under her wing, teaching her canning and preserving. The domestic side of farm life Eleanor never got to pass down. The Pattersons have filled a void Maya didn't realize existed until it was filled. Another text, this one from Sarah Mitchell. Class action suit filed today. 14 families from the CPS cases, plus 7 more we've identified. You were right. The pattern goes back farther than we knew. Sarah's become a fierce advocate for child welfare reform. She's working with state legislators to create oversight protocols preventing CPS from being manipulated by outside interests. It's slow work. Bureaucracies resist change, but she's persistent. Maya walks to the spot where she first found her mother's journal, the bedroom that's now hers, but still feels like Eleanor's space. The wooden box sits on the dresser, carefully preserved. She opens it periodically, rereading the journal, reminding herself why this all matters. Tonight she pulls out a letter she's read 100 times. The one her mother wrote, but never sent, addressed to 12-year-old Maya, trying to explain why she couldn't stop the people taking her daughter away. My darling Maya, if you ever read this, you'll be older, old enough to understand that sometimes love isn't enough to protect the people we love. I fought as hard as I knew how, hired a lawyer I couldn't afford, challenged every complaint, documented every lie, but they had power and money and systems designed to break families like ours. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe. I'm so sorry I failed you. But I swear on everything I have left, I will never stop fighting. I will protect this land for you. I will preserve every piece of evidence showing what they did to us. And I will believe, even when it seems foolish, that someday you'll come home and understand. I love you beyond words. Always, Mom. Maya carefully refolds the letter. Her mother hadn't failed. She'd fought until her last breath, documenting everything, preparing for her daughter's return she never lived to see. Eleanor Chen had been stronger than anyone knew, including herself. Section 9, the wider movement 1 year later. The National Water Rights Conference meets in Washington, D.C., and Maya Chen is a keynote speaker. A year ago, she would have found this terrifying. Now, standing before 600 water rights advocates, environmental lawyers, and policymakers, she feels something closer to determination. Water is becoming the oil of the 21st century, she begins. Corporations understand this. They're positioning themselves to control water resources the way energy companies once controlled petroleum. But water is different from oil. We can live without oil. We cannot live without water. She shows images of dried-up aquifers, communities facing water shortages, families forced from land their ancestors farmed for generations. The Chun family case in Missouri wasn't exceptional. It was typical. What made it different was that we fought back and won. That victory has revealed how widespread this problem truly is. The next slide shows a network diagram. Since our case concluded, we've identified over 200 similar situations nationwide. Families pressured to sell land with water access. Government systems weaponized to force sales. Children removed from homes as leverage against parents. This isn't isolated corporate bad behavior. It's systematic exploitation. A policymaker from the EPA asks, "What legislative solutions would you propose?" Maya had anticipated this question, prepared for it with Margaret's help. First, federal protection for family water rights similar to homesteading protections. Second, restrictions on commercial extraction that depletes aquifers beyond sustainable levels. Third, criminal penalties for corporations that manipulate government agencies to force property sales. Fourth, mandatory review of all CPS cases involving property later acquired by corporations. That fourth one will be impossible to implement. Someone objects. The cost alone is less than the cost of broken families, Maya interrupts. Is less than the cost of depleted aquifers and destroyed communities. We're talking about protecting fundamental rights, family integrity, and water security. If we can't prioritize those, what are we prioritizing? The audience applauds. Not everyone agrees. She can see skeptics in the crowd. But she's learned that changing minds takes time and persistence. During the lunch break, Maya is approached by a woman in her 60s, elegantly dressed, carrying herself with the authority of someone used to being heard. Ms. Chen, I'm Senator Patricia Whitmore from Oregon. I've been following your case closely. I'd like to discuss sponsoring federal legislation based on protections Judge Holloway established in your ruling. Maya's heart pounds. A senator wants to sponsor legislation? A senator who represents a state where water rights battles are destroying rural communities. Oregon has different water law than Missouri, but the principles you've established could be adapted. Would you be willing to testify before committee? I'll testify anywhere that might help. Senator Whitmore hands her a business card. My staff will contact you. This won't be quick or easy. Water law is complicated. Corporate lobbying is fierce. But public opinion is shifting. Your story, the documentary, the cases you've inspired, you've created momentum. Now we need to translate that into policy. That evening, Maya has dinner with Marcus Webb, the Vance Corp whistleblower. He's been rebuilding his life after losing his corporate career, working as a consultant for firms that want to ensure their acquisition practices are ethical, writing a book about corporate water privatization, speaking at conferences about the cost of moral compromise. Any regrets? Maya asks. About testifying? No. About spending 15 years helping Vance Corp destroy families? Every day. Marcus's expression is haunted. I told myself it was just business, that if people couldn't afford to keep their property, selling to us was actually helping them. I believed the lies I was paid to tell. You made it right when it mattered. Did I? The families whose land we took before I testified. I can't give them back those years. The children separated from parents, like you were separated from your mother. My testimony doesn't undo that trauma. No, Maya agrees, but it prevents future harm. You broke a pattern. That counts. They eat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus says, I heard Richard Vance is starting a new company. Different name, different structure, but the same basic model. Identifying water-rich properties. Aggressive acquisition tactics. Maya's stomach clenches. Can he be stopped? The criminal investigation is ongoing, but these things move slowly. Meanwhile, he's free to operate. He's learned to be more careful, more subtle. But the fundamental predatory behavior continues. Then we keep fighting. We document his new company's practices. We warn families he targets. We make it harder for him to operate in darkness. Marcus smiles slightly. You sound like your mother. Eleanor had that same determination, that refusal to accept injustice as inevitable. I'm learning who she was, becoming who she raised me to be before we were separated. After dinner, Maya walks the National Mall, processing the day. She passes the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, physical monuments to principles and struggles. Her mother has no monument except the farmhouse still standing in Missouri, the aquifer still protected beneath it. The daughter who refuses to surrender what Eleanor fought so hard preserve. But maybe that's monument enough. Her phone rings. Margaret Reeves. I've been going through the documents Marcus provided about Richard Vance's new company. It's called Heartland Resources Corporation. Different name, but same structure, same attorneys, same playbook. What can we do? We alert families in regions where he's operating. We share warning signs, sudden CPS complaints, property tax reassessments, environmental violations. We make it harder for him to use the same tactics that worked for 30 years. He'll adapt, find new strategies. Probably. But each adaptation takes time and money. Each exposure makes his operations more difficult. We can't stop him completely. He has too many resources, too much legal protection. But we can slow him down, cost him victories, save some families. Maya looks up at the Washington Monument, illuminated against the night sky. My mother fought alone for 3 decades and saved her farm. What can we accomplish fighting together? Let's find out. Section 10. The Homecoming, full circle, 2 years later. Maya stands in the cornfield, watching combines work through the rows. It's harvest season, 2 years after she first returned to her mother's farm. The land has been completely restored. Healthy soil, efficient irrigation, crops that produce above county averages. But today isn't about the harvest. Today is about something else entirely. A bus pulls into the farm's driveway. Maya's arranged this carefully, worked with social services and the documentary filmmaker to make it happen. The bus doors open and children emerge. 23 kids from foster care, ages 8 to 17, all from farms that were lost to corporate acquisition. They're here to learn, to understand, to see that their family struggles weren't unique or shameful, but part of a pattern, that losing farms to corporations wasn't failure. It was exploitation. Sarah Mitchell emerges from the bus last, shepherding the children. She's become a consultant on child welfare reform, specializing in cases where CPS may have been manipulated by outside interests. These 23 children represent families from 7 states, all connected to forced property sales. Welcome, Maya says, addressing the group. I know some of you are angry about being here. You didn't ask to spend your Saturday on a farm. But I want to tell you a story about a girl who was taken from her mother at age 12, who spent 19 years believing her mother didn't fight for her, didn't love her enough to keep her. She has their attention now. These are kids who understand separation, loss, the feeling of being unwanted. That girl was me. I stood in these fields with my mother, learning to farm, and then social services came and took me away. They said my mother was unfit, said I wasn't safe. And for 19 years, I believed them. Maya walked slowly through the group, making eye contact with individual children. But when my mother died and I came back, I found the truth. She'd been harassed by a corporation that wanted her land. They filed false complaints to Child Protective Services. They used the system to separate us, to break my mother's will to fight. And it almost worked. A girl about 13 raises her hand. Did your mom get you back? No, I wasn't returned to her care. And she died before I came home. I lost 19 years with my mother because of corporate greed. The pain is still real, still sharp. But Maya has learned to use it, channel it into purpose. But I found something when I returned. I found journals where my mother documented everything, evidence of what they'd done to us. And I used that evidence to fight back and win. The corporation that destroyed my family, they're facing criminal charges now. The county officials who helped them, removed from office. The system that was weaponized against us, being reformed. She gestures the farmhouse, the fields, the land stretching away. This farm is protected now. The water beneath it can never be commercially exploited. And I'm here, living the life my mother wanted for me, finishing the fight she started. An older boy, maybe 16, speaks up, but we can't get our farms back. Our family's already sold. Some of you can't. That's true, but some of you might be able to. If the sales were forced through harassment or fraud, they can potentially be challenged. Sarah and I are working with attorneys across the country to review cases. It won't be quick. It won't be easy, but it's possible. She invites them to walk the farm, touch the soil, see the irrigation system, understand what their families were protecting. Most have been too young to appreciate farming when they were removed. Now, older, they can begin to understand. A small girl approaches Maya shyly. Were you mad at your mom for losing you? Yes, Maya admits. I was furious for years. I blamed her for not fighting harder, not loving me enough to keep me. It wasn't until I read her journals that I understood how hard she fought, how much she loved me, how the system was rigged against her. I'm mad at my dad, the girl whispers. He gave up, sold our ranch. Was he being harassed? Pressured? Threatened with legal action he couldn't afford to fight? I don't know. Maybe. Then maybe he didn't give up. Maybe he was overwhelmed by people with more power and money. That's not weakness. That's being human. The girl considers this, then nods slowly. By the end of the day, something has shifted in the children. They've been given context for their experiences, shown that their family struggles were part of something larger. They've met a woman who lost her mother to the same forces and chose to fight back. As the bus prepares to leave, Sarah pulls Maya aside. 3 of these kids have asked me to review their families' cases. They want to fight to reclaim their parents' land. Will any succeed? Maybe. Probably not all. But the fact that they want to try, that they're choosing to fight instead of accepting loss as inevitable, that's because of you, because of your example. After everyone leaves, Maya sits on the porch as evening falls. Frank and Emma Patterson arrive with dinner. They've made this a weekly tradition, 3 farmers sharing a meal and discussing the week's work. Big day, Frank observes, watching the bus disappear down the road. Important day, Maya agrees. Those kids needed to know their family stories matter. That being taken from farms doesn't mean their parents failed. Emma sets out dishes of food. Your mother would be so proud of what you've built here. Not just the farm, the whole movement you've started. I didn't start a movement. I just refuse to surrender. That's how movements start, Frank says. One person standing firm. Others seeing it's possible. Deciding to stand with you. They eat as darkness settles over the farm. Lights glow from the barn where Tom Henderson is finishing evening chores. The irrigation system hums quietly, pulling water from protected aquifer. Everything is peaceful, productive, secure. But Maya knows peace requires constant protection. Richard Vance is still operating under a new company name. Corporations are still targeting water-rich properties. The battle continues. Her phone buzzes. Email from Senator Whitmore's office. The Water Rights Protection Act passed committee. Full Senate vote scheduled for next month. Your testimony made the difference. Thank you. Maya shows the email to Frank and Emma. Federal legislation protecting family water rights, restricting commercial aquifer depletion, creating oversight for CPS cases involving property later acquired by corporations. Everything she and Margaret had drafted, refined through months of committee hearings and compromises, now approaching reality. We might actually win this, she says, almost afraid to believe it. You already have, Emma says firmly. This farm standing, that aquifer protected, those children today understanding their family stories. That's winning. The legislation is just making it official. That night, Maya walks the property one final time before bed. She carries her mother's journal, though she knows it by heart now. In the cornfield, under stars brilliant and infinite, she opens to the final page. Her mother's last words to her, finish what I started. Protect what matters. I did, Mom. Maya says aloud to the night sky, to the land, to the memory of a woman who never stopped believing. We finished it together. The wind moves through the corn stalks with a sound like whispered approval. Somewhere an owl calls. The earth beneath Maya's feet pulses with the life of the aquifer, water flowing in darkness, sustaining everything above. Maya closes the journal and heads back to the farmhouse. Tomorrow she has work to do, crops to manage, testimony to prepare, families to help. The fight continues. It will always continue. But tonight, standing on land her great-grandfather claimed, her mother defended, and she reclaimed, Maya Chen feels something she hasn't felt in 20 years. Complete. Not because the struggle is over, because she's found her place in it. Found purpose in protecting what her mother died defending. Found strength in the community of farmers, lawyers, advocates, and broken families choosing to stand together against forces that once seemed unstoppable. Her mother had written, "You're stronger than you know." Eleanor Chen had been right. Maya walks inside, closing the door on another day, opening the door to another tomorrow. The farmhouse embraces her with familiar smells and sounds. Home, legacy, future, all protected, all secure. All because one woman refused to surrender, and her daughter came home to finish the fight. The Chen family farm will stand for generations. The aquifer will flow clean and protected, and the story of a mother and daughter separated by greed and reunited through justice will inspire families to stand against corporate exploitation for decades to come. Some battles are worth fighting, no matter how long they take. Some legacies are worth protecting, no matter the cost. Maya Chen learned that lesson 19 years late, but she learned it completely, and she'll spend the rest of her life making sure others learn it sooner. The morning air carries the scent of rain as Maya walks the perimeter of what's now officially called the Eleanor Chen Water Preserve. 5 years since she first returned to her mother's farm. 5 years since she discovered the truth and chose to fight. The farmhouse looks nothing like it did that first day. Fresh white paint gleams in the early light. The porch is solid, rebuilt by her own hands with Tom Henderson's patient guidance. Solar panels on the barn roof catch the rising sun. The cornfields stretch green and healthy to the horizon. Over 800 hectares now. She's purchased back some of the parcels Vance's development forced her mother to sell, restoring the farm to nearly its original size. But the biggest change isn't visible from the surface. Maya walks to the well house, a small building she constructed 3 years ago. Inside, monitoring equipment tracks the aquifer's levels, flow rates, temperature, mineral content. Dr. Patricia Moore helped design the system. Real-time data that ensures the water is never over-extracted, that future generations will have what this generation enjoys. The data feeds to a website Maya maintains, transparent and public. Anyone can see exactly how much water is being drawn, how the aquifer responds, whether usage is sustainable. It's become a model for responsible water management, featured in environmental textbooks and copied by farms across the country. Her phone buzzes. Text from Margaret Reeves. Supreme Court decision came down. We won. 7-2. Water Right Protection Act upheld as constitutional. Maya reads a message 3 times before it fully registers. The legislation Senator Whitmore sponsored 5 years ago has been challenged repeatedly by corporate interests. Vance Corp Industries led the legal assault, arguing the law violated property rights and interstate commerce. The case reached the Supreme Court 6 months ago. And now, finally, the highest court in the land has ruled. Family water rights are protected. Commercial aquifer depletion can be regulated. States have the authority to restrict corporate water extraction that threatens agricultural sustainability. Maya calls Margaret immediately. We actually did it, Margaret says, her voice thick with emotion. Your mother's fight, your victory, the movement we built, it just became permanent federal law that corporations can't overturn. How many families does this protect? Thousands, potentially tens of thousands. Every family farming above an aquifer now has legal protections they didn't 5 years ago. Every community dependent on groundwater has tools to prevent corporate depletion. After hanging up, Maya sits on the well house steps, overwhelmed. Her mother had died thinking she'd failed, thinking the fight was too big for one person. But Eleanor Chen had planted seeds that grew into this, a Supreme Court decision protecting water rights nationwide. She pulls out her phone and opens a folder of her mother's journal entries she photographed years ago. One passage has stayed with her. I won't live to see the end of this fight. I know that now, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is to fight anyway, to document everything, to leave a trail for others to follow. If I can just hold on long enough for Maya to come home, if I can preserve the evidence and protect the land until she's ready to understand, then maybe my life will have meant something. Maybe the seeds I plant today will grow into forests I'll never see. You did, Mom. Maya whispers. You planted seeds that became forests. A car pulls into the driveway. Maya wipes her eyes and stands, recognizing the vehicle. Dorothy climbed from the library, now in her late 60s but still sharp as ever. Dorothy emerges carrying a box. I've been going through more of your mother's things that were in storage. Found something I think you need to see. Inside are letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Maya at various foster homes over the years. All returned unopened with stamps reading refused or moved, no forwarding address. I didn't know these existed, Dorothy says quietly. They were in a storage unit your mother rented. The facility contacted me after they saw the documentary. They'd been holding the unit for years after Eleanor's death, waiting for someone to claim it. Maya opens the first letter, dated 6 months after she was taken away. My dearest Maya, it's been 182 days since they took you. I count everyone. The social worker says I can't contact you, that it's better for you to adjust to your new placement without connection to your past. But how can cutting a child off from her mother ever be better? I'm writing anyway, even though I know you'll never receive this. Maybe someday when you're grown, someone will give you these letters. Maybe you'll understand that I never stopped trying to reach you, never stopped loving you, never stopped fighting to get you back. The farm is so quiet without you. I see you everywhere. In the kitchen where you helped me cook, in the fields where you learned to drive the tractor, on the porch where we'd sit and watch storms roll in. You made this place alive. Without you, it's just land and work and loneliness. But I keep going because I have to believe you'll come home someday. I have to believe this is temporary. I love you more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the water in our aquifer, more than my own life. Forever your mother, Eleanor. Maya's hands shake as she reads letter after letter. 19 years of one-sided correspondence. Her mother documenting Maya's missed birthdays, holidays, milestones. Describing the farm struggles, the harassment from advanced development, the legal battles. Expressing hope that someday Maya would return and understand. The final letter is dated 1 week before Eleanor's death. My darling Maya, I'm writing this in the hospital. The doctors say my heart is failing. They're right. I can feel it. Not just a physical failing, though that's real enough, but the heart-deep exhaustion of fighting alone for so long. I'm tired, sweetheart, so very tired, but I can't give up yet. I have to finish preparing everything for you. The journals are complete, documenting every detail of Vance's harassment. The evidence is organized and stored safely. The aquifer protections are legally filed. Everything is ready. I just have to hold on a little longer, in case you come while I'm still alive. In case I get to see your face one more time. Tell you in person how much I love you, how proud I am of the woman you become even though I wasn't there to see it. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't wait. But know that my last thought will be of you. My last prayer will be that you come home, that you understand, that you finish what we started together before they stole you from me. You are the best thing I ever did with my life. Being your mother was my greatest privilege, my deepest joy. They took you away, but they couldn't take my love for you. That's yours forever. Plant good seeds, my darling girl. Protect what matters. And know that your mother loved you beyond measure, beyond time, beyond death itself. Always, Mom. Maya clutches the letter to her chest and sobs. Dorothy sits beside her, offering silent comfort through presence. After long minutes, Maya's breathing steadies. She never stopped trying to reach me, Maya says. 19 years of letters I never received. The system was designed to sever connections. Dorothy says gently, they thought it was better for you to forget. They were wrong. I could have come back after I turned 18. I had the legal right, but I was too angry, too hurt. I wasted years we could have had. You were a child who'd been traumatized. You did what you needed to survive. Maya looks at the stack of letters, a mother's love documented year after year, never wavering despite silence, despite absence, despite the agony of separation. Eleanor Chen had never given up hope. I need to do something with these. Maya says, they can't just sit in a box. An idea forms. Maya pulls out her phone and calls the documentary filmmaker who'd covered her case. Within an hour, she's pitched a concept, a second documentary, centered on these letters, showing the human cost of corporate land acquisition. Not just property loss, but families destroyed, children severed from parents, love thwarted by greed. It needs to show what we're really fighting for, Maya says. Not just water rights or legal precedent, the preservation of families, the protection of love against systems that treat human bonds as collateral damage in pursuit of profit. The filmmaker agrees immediately. Production begins within weeks.